Good morning and welcome to this week's episode of Talking to Artists, a podcast that interviews artists, casual conversation, so that artists can help to share tips and business ideas and how to become more successful, and that collectors can also kind of understand a little bit of what goes on behind the scenes of making some of this great art. So I just want to really thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to talking to Cheri Harte. But before I do that, I just wanted to share with everybody that I've actually posted a lot of these previous interviews. I think this might be my 12th or 13th on my YouTube channel. And I need to have 100 subscribers to actually be able to kind of get this out there and make it useful. So if you wouldn't mind going and subscribing to youtube.com/Kate Taylor Art, I would really, really appreciate it. So excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. And I can see that Cheri is here. So I'm going to get her on board. So it takes a while. Oh, need my glasses. That's why I can't do it. Unable to join. Hey, Cheri. Looks like I cannot invite you. So maybe you can ask to join my video. I haven't run into that before. So anyway, so Cheri is, of course, I've been familiar with Cheri's work because it is so unique and very identifiable as her work. But I first actually really got to know her when she rented some space in Art Alchemy. And it was just really lovely to watch the way she works and, I don't know, the freedom and the joy that she kind of brings into every piece. And you can really see how the work is just really imbibed with all that joy. So I really look forward to talking to her. But I don't know why she is not able to join. I have never seen that before. If anybody knows, hi Cheri, I can see you and I can see you there. I just cannot seem to invite you. I can invite everybody else, but not you. Damn, I thought finally I would actually have one podcast with no technical difficulties. So, go live with Cheri Harte Studio. We'll try that. Okay. Unable to join. I'm sorry, Cheri. I don't know why you're unable to join me. Does anybody else have any ideas? Any Instagram live techies? This is one of the disadvantages of doing this live, of course. And I've not run into this before, so I don't know. I'm thinking it might be your settings. I'm not sure. So this could be a very fast interview. Well, I can tell you a little bit about her. It's not prompting me to join for some reason. That's what she's saying. Yeah, and when I try and add you, I could actually invite anybody else on the call to join. Jose, Dana, Freestyler 100, but I can't seem to add you. You're grayed out. So I'm really not sure why that is. Hey, Jose, do you feel like doing a live interview? We'll do Cheri another day. Winnie's suggesting maybe log out and log back in again, Cheri. I don't know. That's really strange. I don't know. It's one of those crazy things. Every time you think you've kind of worked through the audio, we're not upside down or sideways, something else happens. So... Okay, well, I don't know. I can tell you what I'm working on. I'll just babble for a little bit. Obviously, way back in March, April, May, we were all kind of hoping that we were going to be able to do some live shows. Someone's suggesting a phone restart might happen. So maybe your phone isn't up to date, Cheri. Maybe that's why it's not working. So anyway, we'll wait and see if she can join us. She's doing all those things right now, and I'm sure she's totally stressed now. I'm so sorry. This is not supposed to be stressful. So a lot of those shows that we kind of hoped might happen in the fall are still not really happening in the way that they would normally have done. But a lot of them are becoming hybrids. So I'm doing Art Walk in the Square end of September, and that's actually going to be a combination of online show as well as we're setting up tent in the bottom, the base, the back of my driveway, so that we can actually also have some in-person contact. Obviously following all of the safe protocols for COVID and stuff like that, but I'm really interested to see how that's going to work. I feel like people are kind of pretty excited to get out there and do something a little bit interesting. And obviously, if you're ready to go to restaurants, I feel like, an art tent at the end of a driveway is probably pretty safe. So doing the studio tour with North Toronto, and then have Art Walk in the Square, which is the following weekend, the 25th, 26th. And these shows will also be online, but it actually would be nice to actually go out and talk to people and have them see the work in real life. So we're kind of all hoping that that's going to happen. Okay, looks like I might be able to.
Hopefully she's not totally stressed. Okay, we will wait for her to join. So Cherie's work, if you're not familiar with it, it's very playful. I think that's one of the wonderful things about it. And so the exploration kind of the human form. And I'm really interested to learn how she kind of integrates the technology and the psychology and Reiki and yoga, which are also really key and important things in her life. As well as, like last week, we had a conversation about motherhood and how motherhood has an impact on art and the art you do and how you do the art. And Cherie has a bit of a story around that as well. So Cherie, I have invited you, so I'm just waiting for you to accept. And then hopefully we can have a conversation, because I don't think I can talk about your work for more than a few minutes. I can certainly say that in sharing a studio with Cherie, it was very, very interesting to see how people, hey, there you are. Hi, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can't really hear you.
Okay, give me 1 moment.
So you might have to turn it. And did you turn your Wi-Fi off? Because I do find sometimes that creates some issues.
It is off.
So much for like a totally casual conversation now, right?
That's fine. There we go. I'll move so you can see that latest piece of work a little bit. There we go.
Okay, if there's any way you can turn your sound up just a little bit more, that would be great. I'm just having a hard time hearing you, and I want to make sure I catch everything. Maybe I can put my other speaker in, that would help too.
Is that better?
That's better.
Yay!
Okay. Well, this will not be the first Talking to Artists that has no technical issues, unfortunately. but I am really... Yeah, one could say that, the thrill/stress. But yes, it's totally authentic. You know that. I'm not going back and editing stuff, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I gave you a little bit of a blurb about what you do, but I'd love to I always like to start off with what are you working on now? What's your inspiration right now?
Oh, well, I have found with COVID, the whole processing of everything that's going on and going through these waves of emotion, that always seems to come out in my work. And I just really allow. I journal, and I do sometimes do little sketches, or I have this idea of a series I'm going to do, and then I go to the canvas, and that's not what wants to come out. So I just allow what wants to come out onto the canvas to come out. And I think much like you, my inspiration is sharing joy, sharing love, being able to process all of those emotions that are shadow emotions, but in the end see the light at the end of the tunnel and feel that having gone through a challenging time like COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's very, it's kind of critical at this time to really get that, not just happiness, but like this deep-seated joy and contentment. And I think that is what helps you kind of get through some of these crazy times, right?
Yeah, well, and focusing on those things, being able to be okay with, I feel lousy today, so I can paint that out, and I often do, and then I leave that and I come back to the canvas and I rework it. So there are all these layers of emotion. I don't shy away from the shadow or the, I guess, maybe darker emotions, grief or sadness or whatever it might be. That is definitely in my work, but I have learned, and much more so in my earlier work where I just kind of pour my soul, and I find a lot of it, I wasn't recognizing it, but a lot of it was very shadow emotion-like. And now I've been able to process those emotions differently so that what I'm left with in the end is this sense of love and joy that I want for myself, for my family, for my friends, for our community, globally, which is, I think, a little bit about what's going on collectively in the world right now.
Yeah. And I think, I think maybe we're similar too, in the sense that it's less about the end piece and it's more about the process to get to the end piece. Like, I think, for me as well, it's where you kind of work through some of your thoughts or your ideas or how things are coming together. And for you, you're working through those emotions. So at the end of it, you feel like, oh, it's good. Like, I'm feeling good about it. And I'm very happy now that someone else can take it, put it on their wall, live with the joyful pieces that come out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And stepping back and looking at your work, and I find the canvas really, it's where I learn about myself. For sure, I come face to face with myself every time I pick up a paintbrush or any kind of art tool, whether it's my palette knife or an oil stick, and I learn to step back and look at what I'm creating. So although I have learned to focus on the joy, focus on the love, and it's been a transformative process for me, for sure.
I used to love watching your work. And I think that's one of the coolest things about sharing a studio with somebody, and especially pre-COVID, where I could go into your studio space and watch you and talk about kind of the process. But I loved all the multiple layers of the writing and, I don't know, just the language of your work I thought was really fascinating.
Thank you. Yeah, I love journaling. So the beginning of my work is, I don't feel paralyzed by a blank canvas. I just go and start making marks, and whether those marks are actual words that I write out or just very meditative movement that has this meaning behind it, this emotion that I'm conveying onto the canvas, that's the way that I begin. And then often those lines dictate what the next brush stroke will be and how these creatures or people. I started out painting portraits of my big kids, and then I moved into more abstracted and mixed media work and doing encaustic work. And from there, I wanted to figure out how I could get the texture of encaustic without using the encaustic, because I didn't have proper ventilation in my studio, and I didn't want to be doing that in the winter or in shared studio space. And so then these random marks, abstracted marks, started becoming these people or creatures. And I don't know where they come from, but they just show up. And my partner has said, when are you going to go back to abstracted work? I'm like, I don't know. This is what I'm out right now.
You're not finished with this one.
No.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to finish what you're doing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it reminds me of Mike Smalley's work as well, not the final product, but the process of it, because his background is in graphic design. And so he also would write whole stories in kind of pencil on the canvas before he would actually paint. And there's something really lovely about that hidden story underneath all these pieces. It's there, but you can't see it anymore, but you can feel it because it comes through the imagery that ends up being on the canvas.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I love that idea too. And I love the idea of, I've learned through my yoga and Reiki that honoring feelings of sadness or grief. So allowing those to be present and working through those emotions and what they're telling me. Jealousy, that's a great one. If I feel jealous of something, that's something that I'm interested in, that I would like more of in my own life. And so how do I incorporate that into what I'm creating and how I'm moving forward? And how does that individual story inform a larger, more collective story about what we are all building together in our communities as our, right now we use the term bubble, but as our bubble grows, and so in our families and in our friend groups and expanding out into our larger communities.
And so do you find, for example, if you're dealing with an emotion like jealousy, which is it's an interesting emotion. I don't think people often talk about that, and especially with social media, I think there sometimes are those feelings of jealousy, or why is someone doing something and I'm not. Like, do you find then that process of understanding and articulating it, does that help you kind of understand it better and get rid of it, or do you understand it and then kind of understand where it's coming from, or what happens for you in that process?
I don't think I don't think I'll ever be rid of the emotion of jealousy, because I think it's a natural human emotion. So I think accepting it and being able to have conversation about it from an honest place of, motherhood and having a baby and putting on pregnancy pounds, and then seeing somebody who is, and having a C-section, which I did with this last pregnancy, and then seeing somebody who's out running and in great shape, and I'm like, that is myself telling me that it's time for me to get myself in action, and that person is just leading me down that path. So the processing for me really is, it's just about self-awareness, and we're all in it together. And if I'm feeling jealous or overwhelmed by something, to look back inward and see what that has to tell me in order for me to grow towards the light, to be more positive, to be more loving towards myself and towards others. Yeah,
it's an interesting way of thinking about it, because that example you just used, I wouldn't actually have said that's jealousy. I think it's maybe more self-awareness of what you want, and there's external factors that might trigger you to do that. And maybe I just feel jealousy is a bit more of an insidious, destructive emotion than what you were just describing, which sounds like it was a catalyst to help you kind of look at where your life is and move it forward in a more positive way. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's getting too psychologically deep.
No, but it's interesting because I used to feel that way as well, and I now have kind of come to a place, and I think like the last pregnancy, so when I had my big kids, I stayed home. I was a stay-at-home mom, and now navigating working as a full-time artist and keeping my foot in my yoga teaching, which I really love, and I was doing some online Reiki sessions with COVID, and so I have my reachers out in so many different directions, and I used to believe that jealousy or these darker shadow emotions were dark and insidious and evil, and I mean, I'm using, this big, it was so evil. I really have come to embrace that all emotions are good emotions. And it is just, grief is another example of an emotion that I think we have the opportunity to learn, losing somebody who we don't I don't believe we lose them, but somebody who's no longer with us on this earthly plane, is a reminder to spend time with the people that we love and to express our care for our friends and family and a person we might not know on the street, because tomorrow may be a totally different world. And so to be very present with those emotions and not label them as good or bad, that has been something that recently I'm like, oh, it's okay. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be jealous.
Yeah, and it's interesting because our society very often doesn't really allow you to be sad. I mean, it's all about being happy and, putting a good face forward and the stiff upper lip. And, I do think that is a challenge, especially in times like this when people are not always feeling so happy or confident. But I think it seems to me that it adds additional pressure to people that are suffering from mental illness where they can't just think happy thoughts and be happy. So there's that constant reiteration of not honoring those times when you do feel depressed and you just do feel sad and you do feel like wallowing a little bit. And to a certain degree, that's healthy to do that for a while.
Yeah, I agree with that, which is part of why I allow it to come out in my work, because I think all emotions are healthy emotions, and it is in how we process them and how we support others in processing them. So as you said, with mental health, it is sometimes more of a challenge for us. The whole Black Lives Matter thing brought that to the forefront for me, with, realizing my white privilege and how somebody else, and I've always taught my kids to approach friendship from a place of compassion. You have no idea if that little girl's mommy or daddy had a fight this morning. So you don't have to be their best friend, but be compassionate towards them and try to come from a place of understanding. And I think it's the same thing with emotion as adults. And I think a lot of us are, maybe it's a key ingredient that we're missing in regular school days, is the learning of processing emotions in a healthy way and not labeling emotions as good or bad, but accepting them, and how do we express those emotions and how do we transform them into emotions that really do feel better, and what do we learn in the process of that transformation?
Yeah, I agree. I came across a phrase a while ago, and for me, it really resonated, because it was basically that, we tend to judge other people for their actions, but our own actions for their intent. And so I really try very hard to try and look at people's actions, especially people that annoy me or do something that crosses me, to try and really think about it from the intent point of view versus what the actual action is. Because like you said, you don't know what's going on in people's lives, and sometimes people just are a little bit thoughtless, but it isn't really specifically directed at anybody. And giving them a little bit of space to not be perfect, I think, is a great gift we can all give each other, including ourselves.
I think so as well. Yeah, I agree with you. It's interesting, and it's interesting to see how it comes out as an artist in the work. And I think a lot of artists do share those emotions in their work. It's part of the process of making the work, just as we create our lives every day. The same thing with our canvas. So how does it come out, with your palette knife work, which also I loved being in the studio and hearing the sound of that, and how meditative it is, and how you get out of your head and into your body and into your heart and soul, rather than this linear thinking way of being.
Yeah. I find when I think too much, it doesn't work. Like it becomes all tight, or I don't know. It's interesting because, Lisa and I are working on this COVID collaboration, which I've mentioned a couple times because it's been so interesting from an emotional point of view, whereas I thought it was going to be super easy and fun and we'll just play. But I just actually had the realization as we're sitting here talking, as I'm spending way too much time thinking about it, and therefore it's really, really not working. I totally ruined it. Lisa had some good stuff happening, but I was overthinking it. And that's when, I don't know, the true emotion doesn't come out. And I think you can feel it in the final piece.
I haven't seen the final piece. Is it?
It's because it's ugly.
Have you shared the final piece? No.
Well, it's so funny because both Lisa and I were kind of going really tentatively going back and forth, and then I painted these really ugly flowers, and she's like, "I don't know, Kate. I don't know what to do with it." So anyway, it's kind of back in my hands. I worked on it a little bit yesterday and just made it even worse than it was already. So yeah, I'll post it because that's part of the process. But I feel like there's something in my brain I want to do, and I'm trying to work through, and it's just so not working. So I feel like maybe I'm overthinking.
But that's kind
we'll
of
see.
the fun. I remember your sister posting, Helen posting a piece, and she said, "Is that its ugly stage right now?" And I love that ugly stage because you can sit back and look at what it is you've created and not judge it. Again, it's like judging the emotions. So being able to say, I made marks.
Yeah.
And somebody else, I could look at it and say, oh my gosh, I love that mark making. And part of what I love is I love marks that are unfamiliar. I love work that is unfamiliar or that has a little bit of discord, so that you know that the artist is processing and sharing their emotions on the canvas.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So if you posted a piece that was in progress, like for you it's in progress and it's in that ugly teenage stage, which you're confident you can work through it, and someone loved it and wanted to buy it, would you let it go at that point? Or in your mind, is it not finished? Or because the purchaser sees something finished in it, would you let it go or not?
Oh, I would absolutely let it go. And I have let it go. I've done that. I've had people reach out to me when I posted on Instagram, and it was work that my intention was to go back in and continue working on it, and the person wanted it and loved it at that stage. And so I did. And I think what it has taught me, again, is that stepping back from judgment and labeling something good or bad, ugly or beautiful, and it's really all beautiful. I mean, the act of creation is beautiful. And so if somebody else, it speaks to them, it speaks to their soul, and they want it in their home, absolutely. I'm great with that.
Yeah. Well, and I've sort of learned that as well, so I do too. And
You do.
I remember not doing it once because I felt like, there's just a few little things I just feel like I just need to fix up or work on. And in their minds, I ruined it. Like there was something that was lost in that piece of it. So I do the same thing. Like I think it's about how other people react and the emotions they get out of it, and they're ultimately the ones living with it.
And being able to step back from perfection, which becomes, I think, more and more challenging as adults to think abstractly and be able to step back from that perfection and just have fun and play. And I mean, all of the things that when you're a really young child, when I watch Niles play, and I'm like, oh, he doesn't have any of that judgment or, so it's fascinating.
I think it allows you to forgive yourself. It's actually one of the reasons that I do this podcast live. And I've had a lot of people say, well, if you videotaped it, then you could edit out those areas that are upside down or not good or not smooth. And I'm like, but for me, once I do that, it'll become so much more, I will become more judgmental. And this way, it's just like, it is what it is. I'm not pretending to be a professional podcaster or interviewer. So if you like it, that's great. If you don't, that's fine too. And there's just such a huge amount of freedom in not having to worry about if it's perfect or not.
And a humanness. And
Yeah.
more, I mean, I've admittedly not watched every Thursday, although I am making my way through watching.
You don't have to.
But no, because I enjoy them so much. I am finding that I learn so much in chatting with other people. Part of exhibiting is that I learn about myself. I learn about our community, our global community, by exhibiting internationally. And I think if you videotaped, if you taped them ahead and edited, you would lose the relationship that just naturally flows and is developed. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. So you talked a little bit about traveling, and I know when I first met you, you had just come back from a whirlwind tour doing all the, I think there were affordable art fairs in Europe and Asia. And do you want to talk a little bit about that experience?
Sure. Well, I kind of came into my art practice and exhibiting. My big kids were just at the age where they were launching, and I had gone to Chile actually, and before leaving, Julie McMeekin at Art Embassy asked me if I would consider doing a solo show where she said, you know, a room filled with these paintings, and they were very abstracted X's and O's. And she said, just imagine a room filled with these. And at that time, I couldn't imagine a room filled with them. And we left for Chile with the big kids. It was before I had Niles. And while I was there, I had my art kit with me, and I said to my partner Greg, I need to have, this is my morning journaling and a little bit of art, and then I can go out and be fully present. But I just needed to have that morning to myself, just a couple of hours in the morning to get that out before we headed out. So I came back from Chile, and I think that was around 2017, and said to Julie at Art Embassy, okay, I'm ready. And so that year I did my teacher training for yoga. I did my first solo exhibit. I had done one group show at Art Embassy the year before that. And I then started applying to the other art fair, which is through Saatchi Art, and got pregnant with the littlest one in our house now, Niles. And then he was born in April, and in October we headed off to LA for my first juried exhibit. And then from there I got into the artist project, which I was so thrilled about. After the artist project in February, we left for London in March, and we went straight from London back to LA for, again, these juried exhibits with the other art fair. And then I applied to a fair in Tokyo, and we packed up the kids and went to Tokyo for June and exhibited there. And then I did an artist residency just around the time that I moved into Art Alchemy, and that was over on Toronto Island. And so I hadn't really done any exhibiting in Toronto, and I hadn't really gotten to know the art community here very well. It was kind of a backwards opportunity. I'd had the baby, and
Traveled the world.
I was like, this is the time.
You affordable art fairs, right? That you were doing?
I'm so sorry.
Were they the affordable art fairs that you were doing in Tokyo and LA?
I was doing the other art fair, which is
the other art fair.
Yeah, they were supposed to come here September this year, but because of COVID, they've moved that to April of 2021. And I have to say, they have become, the artist community in Toronto becomes a family. And the other art fair has been that family for me internationally. They're a really great group to exhibit with, and very supportive of their artists. And so I'm excited that they started in the UK and they're in Australia, and they have shows throughout the US. And so this will be their first Canadian show, which is very exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I've applied ages ago, so I guess we'll see. But it is lovely to. I agree. It's great to be part of the sort of the Toronto, not really fully Canadian, but the Toronto art scene, and through the Redwood Media Group, where I've done a number of shows too. Then I have that sort of international kind of connection and networking with artists, which is really fabulous. It's a fabulous thing to have.
Well, your work is in galleries internationally.
Yeah.
You have work in the UK, right?
Yeah, this amazing gallery called Wycliffe in London, which was actually funny because we originally connected because I was born in Cambridge, England. So we started chatting, and it's, I probably need to actually give them some more work, but it's been a while, but I'd love to kind of go back over there. And I don't know, it's neat to see it in a country that's not your own. And in the US as well, I have quite a few galleries that represent me, which is good.
I know you're all throughout the US.
Yeah, it ebbs and flows. I mean, some are doing well. I worked with quite a few art buyers, like corporate art buyers, who did a lot of hospitals. But then when COVID hit, all the elective surgeries were canceled, and so those hospitals are putting a hold on buying original art, which is sort of an interesting business model. It's just so different from Canada, right?
Yeah.
Where you don't have to worry about a hospital being a for-profit or not. But
right.
It's starting. I'm finding now it's starting to resurrect again.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's an interesting time. It's an interesting time to. I've gone through the emotions of, the essential services and what am I creating and what value am I adding as an artist, and the whole.
Well, and I think it's been interesting that we've seen. Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen a lot of, especially musicians, a lot of the artists and theater and visual arts, and people are really gravitating towards that in this kind of time of uncertainty. And I hope that it elevates I won't say elevates the arts, but elevates becoming a full-time artist as a career choice that people will accept and not be so dismissive of when people realize how important the arts are to their lives and to their health, mental health.
Of course, and I found it interesting in my neighborhood. I'm in Danforth Village, and now the art that is in people's windows when you walk by their windows, and it's still hanging in a lot of homes, as well as rock art. So how many people during this period of time have tapped into that creative side? And and then we had people who were dropping off art rocks as in their neighbors' yards. So we were the recipients of this very beautiful rock, which I will post on my feeds. And as we were building our our garden. So it's been fun to see people. I mean, it's not just in the kitchen baking bread, because there's been a lot of that creativity as well, but that people are expressing themselves through art and recognizing the importance of expressing themselves through art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally get it. So what are you kind of working on next? What's your plan?
I know it's interesting because I've kind of, I find I kind of pocket my work. So I will do, and I heard Corinne say this last week, maybe it comes from having kids who are still at home, but I'll go through, I know you do this though as well, where you paint grounds if you're not feeling like you're in the flow of, so that's the work that gets created, that grounding, which is very fascinating actually when you think about it. So I know that there's a shift that's happening. I can kind of feel it, and I haven't been painting as much this last week. I'm a quick painter, but I also, because it's very meditative, but I also go back into my work. So I will paint, and then I move that canvas and move on to the next canvas, and so I have multiple pieces. Really, right now, my feeling is that our world needs some, I'm trying to be diplomatic in the way that I phrase this, but we're, with everything that I see going down in the States with Black Lives Matter, and not just in the States, I mean, here in Toronto, we've had some big news around how we are treating one another, how we judge one another, how we, with COVID and going back to school, or phase 3 opening up, and kind of being accepting of another person's choice, and how eager they are to step into stage 3, or how they don't feel ready to step back into school, and all of that entails. So that is all kind of feeding into my soul right now, and I know I'm doing some reflection about it, and so shifts are coming. So I can't tell you what I'm working on next, because that's all.
It's percolating.
It is percolating right now, which is very fascinating. And I'm doing a lot of, I find when there are shifts happening for me that I do a lot of just sketches. And so that's been a part of my work right now, a huge part of my work, which isn't always present. So things are shifting.
It loosens you up though, right? I just actually bought big, large pieces of newsprint, because I've, with Creative Adventures, we started doing blind contours, like encouraging people to do blind contour drawing. And I kind of just realized how much I just love that. I love that flexibility and freedom. So I don't typically have a sketchbook. And so I realized with my discussion with Corinne last week, I think I'm a little bit afraid of too much planning, and I'm afraid it's going to kind of create stiffness in the work, but I think I also have to kind of get over that. And so I'm starting to do more kind of sketching and drawing and blind contour and on newsprint that will just be tossed. So there's no lasting kind of importance to it, more the process.
Or layered. Let's do a collaboration. Keep those newsprints, and then I will, because that's...
See, now it's stressful.
No, it's fun.
Yeah, it will be. I do love collaborations.
Yeah, those are the things. It's interesting because I did a studio cleanout. I've done so many studio cleanouts since COVID. Oh my gosh. And which I know you have as well. I've seen that you've, it's time to do that little bit of a purge and a cleanout. But I had New York Times newspapers that I will sometimes collage into my work. And I decided, for the sake of my studio and my sanity, because I was feeling a little bit too cluttered and cramped in, that I would get rid of those. And of course, now that I have this clean studio and I'm ready to start experimenting again, I'm like, So
Carrie's just said, keep the drawings. You never know when you might need them, and they might become worth something someday, maybe.
Yes, I agree. Although then I find there's only so much you can hold on to. So sometimes you have to.
I remember seeing the Tim Burton, I think it was a Tim Burton exhibition at the Tiff Bell Lightbox, and his mother must have kept everything he did. Like when he would doodle on, like a cereal box or a newspaper, which, I mean, if you're artistic, you do that all the time, your jeans, and most of that stuff gets tossed. She just must have kept everything, but it was quite fascinating. It's kind of neat to see that progression, but mine will not be so inspiring, I'm sure. It's more therapeutic, I think. Okay, so are you ready for... I could ceremoniously burn them too. That could be fun. A little destruction.
And then give us a tour of them. That process work is so fascinating because it informs your pieces, right?
Yeah, could be. We'll have to work on that.
Yeah.
Have to think about it. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of our time, so now I'm going to throw a couple of fast, quick questions at you.
Okay.
What piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh, just be a yes. Absolutely. Absolutely be a yes. I think too often we overthink things or we hesitate, but to be a yes for yourself and for others around you, that would be my biggest piece of advice. Just go for it.
Oh, that's a cool one. Okay, this one's much easier. Do you have a favorite tool that you could never work without?
Oh, my fingers. I often...
you never have to worry about losing them, I guess.
No, but if I'm really, when I'm really in the flow of things, and it's fascinating because I worked with somebody who said you should always wear gloves when you're painting, and I have tried that, to keep the paint from getting into your bloodstream and for health reasons. And I'm like, for health reasons, for my mental health, I need to actually feel the paint and put it on the canvas with my hands and be able to scrape things with my hands. So definitely it would be my fingers and finger painting.
Well, I think that's the other thing I remember you and I having a conversation about, because you're like, Kate, I just want to let you know I'm a really messy painter. I'm like, oh, thank God, because I feel I am as well. I have to wear a full outfit when I paint. But there's something about, I feel way more creative if I can actually have the ability to be messy.
Well, I don't want to have to think about, I worked once in a studio space that was somebody's, it was an apartment that they had just renovated, and they knew that I was there as an artist and I was using the space to paint. And barrier cream, thanks, Corinne.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
So I was concerned, and it was holding me back. I said, I don't want to mess up your newly renovated space, and it's not something that sometimes when I'm working, because I'm working with media, there's stuff that gets all over that would need to be scraped off, and it's a big job to clean it up. And so I really felt like it was holding me back.
Yeah, I feel like that too.
Just have the freedom to play and make a mess and get lost in not your head, but in your heart and soul. That's so key.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, this one I asked everybody. What would be your big hairy ass goal for the future?
Oh, gosh, I don't really know. It's funny because I look at, I guess it would be to to be in a gallery, in a large public gallery, but from the place of people feeling inspired and motivated by my work, and the energy of that work inspiring them to go out and just be more, I mean, I know it's naive, and but it comes out of my work, just to be more loving and kind to one another. I think, I think sometimes our societal priorities are a little bit backwards. So that, I received an email from somebody this week saying that she stumbled across my work and she just needed to reach out and let me know how much it inspired and touched her. And so that's my big hairy ass goal. That's the thing that motivates me. And I need to, like everybody else, we need to make money to feed ourselves and so on. But if I could leave this world and somebody could say, she brightens my day with her work. She helps me understand myself better. She helps me to feel inspired to go out there and love and help others. That's really it.
Cool. Would you have like a single piece of advice you would maybe give to emerging artists or artists just starting out?
Oh, for sure. I would say believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. Absolutely. Don't doubt that you can do it. And back to the advice that I would give my younger self, be a yes. Just apply. Keep applying. And I say it to people all of the time. I applied to that show and I didn't get in the first time. Just keep applying. Believe in yourself and know that the jury turns over and there's different perspectives all of the time. And your work is always evolving. So just keep at it.
And do you have a tip then for collectors? If they were looking to start a collection, add to their collection?
For sure, buy what you love. Buy the art that you connect with emotionally. I once had somebody come, it was in LA actually, and she really loved this piece. And she chatted with me for a long time, and her friends were there, and they were trying to talk her out of buying the piece because it didn't resonate with them. But she had this deep connection with the work. So buy the work that you connect with. Speak to the artist if possible. Get to know them. And you have to look at it. It's a piece. It becomes a piece of your home, of your family. So buy what you feel passionate about, not the trend or the fad.
Or I think that's totally legitimate. You have to buy what you love.
Sure.
Okay, well, this has been really lovely. I'm so glad that we were able to figure out your tech issues and you were able to join Talking to Artists. So we'll post this, and you've given me some really interesting things to think about, which is selfishly why I do this podcast. I get to suck everybody's brains of all their cool ideas.
Well, I love that we've been able to connect because I've missed you since COVID. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, hopefully we shall show again in real life one day soon.
Sounds great.
Hopefully at the other art fair in Toronto. That would be really fun.
Yay! Yes. Yeah.
Yay!
I'm excited for that one. Yay!
Yeah. Well, I'm not in yet, but I'm going to be pre-excited, optimistically hopeful.
Yes. Yeah, there's another piece of advice. Be optimistically hopeful. It's a good way to be.
That's right. That's what my dad used to always say, right? Hope for the best, plan for the worst.
Yeah. Well, and thank you so much for sharing your platform and your process with us, because I have also learned so much.
Well, it's been really lovely. I think Sue has a quick question here. Let's see. She's just saying I'm a fantastic interviewer, which I'm totally not.
Yes,
No,
you are.
I'm just inherently nosy and super interested in people.
No, but when you reached out to say, should we chat before the interview, and we decided to just come on and do the thing while the thing was happening. And I think it is because you put people at ease. You're just naturally so generous and caring, and so it makes the interview process. I don't know that I would have felt this comfortable. I feel like I know there are people listening and watching us, but I feel quite comfortable in bearing my soul to you because you make it such an easy process to do. So thank you. Much. Yeah.
I've loved talking to you. Okay, we have to run because we're running out of time. I want to make sure this gets captured. Okay. So I'm gonna let you go. Thank you so much. And thanks so much for everyone for joining me. Next week we've got amazing photographer Sage Stewart Zarbernicki. I'm sorry, I practiced your last name and I screwed it up. But anyway, hope to see you next week, and thank you so much everyone for joining.